Well, it's so good to have all of you with us today. My name is Chris, one of the pastors here, and we're in this series titled Elephant in the Room, and relationships are the most important component in all of our lives, all of our relationships. I mean, we have so many types of relationships: dating relationships, marriage relationships, parenting relationships, grandparenting relationships. We have work relationships, church relationships, social relationships. We have relationships that we interact with daily, weekly. We even have relationships that we might only talk to once a year. And study after study after study has just proven that the quality of your life, your emotional health and your physical health, the quality of your life is intrinsically tied to the quality of our relationships. I mean, that's why they're so important. And in all of our relationships, we have 1, 2, 3, and if you're like me, an entire herd of elephants roaming around all of our relationships. We just do. And our simple definition around an elephant in the room when it comes to our relationships is this: it's an obvious issue, absurdly ignored. And when we just pause long enough, we realize, I mean, we all have issues, obvious issues in every one of our relationships. And we have this talent, this knack just to ignore them. If you woke up one day and you walked down to your kitchen to get a cup of coffee and there was an elephant roaming around your kitchen, you would take notice, right? If you walked out to your car and there was an elephant sitting in your driveway, you'd post that picture everywhere, right? But here's the thing. We have these obvious issues, and we just seem to just think they're going to go away. If you've ever had a friend who's dating that person, and love was blinding them, you did everything you could to try to convince them that the issue in their dating relationship was absurdly wrong. But love just blinded them. It's easy for us to see them in everyone else's relationship, but if we just pause long enough, we all know. We all have 1, 2, 3, or a whole herd of elephants in our relationships. And here's a common denominator in all of our relationships. You're a person. Me, I'm a person, right? In all of our relationships, whether they're thriving relationships or just, I mean, they're the most tense relationship you could ever dream of, right? We as individuals are always the common denominator. We're the common connecting point in every one of our relationships because we're always in our relationships. There's about 6.6 billion people right now in the world. Experts think that 108 billion people have one time walked on this earth. And when we think about those numbers, let's just focus on today, 7.6 billion people. Every single person is a unique person. There's not one person who smiles like another person. There's not one person like you, like me, right? We're all unique. We think different, we process different, we have different personalities. Oh, you could take a personality test and you might find a personality that fits you in a personality test, and you find other people who have the same personality. But once you get to know those people, we realize that there's some common connecting points. But when we really get into even those common connecting points, we're still so uniquely different. All of us process differently, think differently, smile differently, laugh differently, talk differently. My mom's in town. I was walking into a restaurant with her to sit down to eat lunch. We're in one of those deep conversations. We found our table. We continued to talk. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice as we were talking. I couldn't hear what this voice was saying, but as I heard this voice somewhere in my subconscious, I'm like, I think I know that voice. And towards the end of lunch, I finally just turned around because, again, my mom and I were just talking. I turned around, and I was like, oh, I know that person. So I walked over to his table. He was having lunch with someone, and I walked up. I'm like, I thought I heard your voice. And his first thought was, did you hear what I was saying? I'm like, would you like to tell me? I'm now intrigued. But right, there's only one person that has his voice. It's him. We're all unique. And so in part 1 of the series, we looked at these transformational words written by a shepherd who became king, a guy named David. And he wrote these words. He said, I am awesomely wonderful. When David paused, he realized that God had created his inmost being, his kidneys, his personality, everything that made him unique, everything that made him only one of a kind. No one else was like David. David was like God, when you created my inmost being, when you created my kidneys, when you created that thing that makes me me, I praise you. And then he said, God, you knit me, you shaped me, you molded me, you embroidered me. Out of nothing, you shaped me. And God, I praise you because I am awesomely wonderful. And maybe you found yourself this week saying those words to yourself. I actually made this comment during part one, as you were talking about these words here, and I kind of paused and I go, man, I would love to have a t-shirt that said awesomely wonderful. It was one of those passing by comments. This week, I didn't receive one, I received 2 different t-shirts from 2 different people that say awesomely wonderful on it. It was epic. I'm like, yeah, I got 2. So right now I'm going to say I would love a large pepperoni pizza. Anyone? Anyone? But seriously, I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's so epic. I can't wait to wear them, right? It's like, yeah, because there's just something about, we spend so much time tearing ourselves down. There's just something about saying, God, I praise you because you've made me awesomely wonderful. But if you're like me at all, and I'm pretty sure, if not all, most, like 99.9999% of you, and we're going to round up. We replace the period with a comma, and then we write the word except. I'm awesomely wonderful, except my height, I wish I was taller. I'm awesomely wonderful, except for my metabolism. I just look at food and I pack on pounds. I'm awesomely wonderful, except for my smile. I just don't like my smile. I'm awesomely wonderful, except for my artistic skills. I can't draw stick figures good. I'm awesomely wonderful, except for my networking ability. I work hard being a networker, but I have to expend so much energy to network, not like my coworker who can network so well, right? Like we start making all of our exceptions. The other day I was working on my message and all of a sudden my youngest daughter FaceTimes me, video calls me. When I pick up my phone, I'm like, is she really FaceTiming me? I mean, I was in my basement office and she was up 1 flight of stairs. I'm like, seriously, have we come to this point in life as family that my kid can't walk down the stairs? But I answer it. And she was wondering kind of the rhythm of the day. And so we're just talking. I'm like, yeah, you got to get ready. And we got this and we got this, right? We're just walking through the rhythm of the day. And then all of a sudden, and the phone's really close to her face. All I can see is her face, right? Her phone's really close to her face. And all of a sudden, I see this finger come in. And her finger literally starts to squish down her nose. And I'm like talking with her. She's like this. I'm like, Claire, what are you doing? She goes, man, I got a really big nose. And here's what's really hilarious about that, other than I'm like, I still can't believe I'm FaceTiming you and we're in the same house. On the Trethewey side, we have these really small noses. And on the Redmond side, that's my wife's maiden name, on her family side, they have really small noses. And Claire has inherited the Trethewey and Redmond nose. She has such a small nose, right? But it's just amazing. In that moment, right, she's just picking out like, I'm wonderful except for my big nose. And we all have those exceptions. Not only those exceptions, we have those exceptions that we don't want to talk about at all. We have those exceptions that we don't want anyone to know about. We have those exceptions that if it got out. Have you ever been just going through the rhythm of the day and all of a sudden that thought entered your mind? I'm not talking about the good thoughts. I'm talking about that thought. And you're like, where did that come from? I mean, that thought about a person, that thought about, you fill in the blank. That thought. I mean, it's great to say I'm awesomely wonderful, except, do you have that thing that, I mean, it just has its tentacles wrapped around you? You try to stop, you try to quit, you try to overcome, you try to make different decisions. And some days you're like, yes, I'm winning. And other days, wham, it has you. And some days you actually want it to have you. I'm awesomely wonderful, except to your face I smile, but behind the smile I hate you. I'm awesomely wonderful, except, yep, I know forgiveness is supposed to be for all people, and I've forgiven all people except for you. You see, this is what happens when we have our exceptions. We take all of our exceptions and we dump them into a bag. I mean, we don't want anyone to see those exceptions. I mean, we might leak one out here and there because, you know, that kind of feels good. I'm authentic. But the real exceptions, we just shove into a bag. We hide them in a bag. We make sure that no one else can get them. And as we take parts of us and we shove them away, we replace it with our mask. The technical term is our persona. It's the outward mask. It's the actor, us, that we like everyone else to see. I wrote it this way. Your persona is a fabricated me that I designed for you to see. And we are experts at putting on our mask. We're experts in only showing the things we want other people to see. I mean, we live in a social media culture. Now, this has been going on for generation after generation after generation. This is not tied to social media, but social media just reveals the fact that we like to design an image, a picture of what we want people to see. And if you've ever posted a picture on social media, you've done this. I've done this. If you're on family vacation this summer, you did this, right? That perfect family vacation photo. I mean, you took 200 pictures to get one. I mean, you got that one. But what was happening before were screaming kids running back and forth, a spouse that was just like, I'm done. Take that picture. I don't want any more pictures. You're trying to get the epic background with the sun setting, the waves rolling in. So you're trying to remove debris, and you're waiting for that person who's strolling behind you. I mean, you do everything you can. It took you hours to get that one picture. You finally get it. Right when you get a snap, you're on your phone to post it. Now your kids are screaming again. Your spouse is walking down the beach to cool off. And you write the perfect caption. I love the simple moments of life. Post. And here's the thing. We do it all the time. The thing with social media, it's all about, if you're not careful, managing your image. And when you manage your image, you become imaginary. If you're not careful, you won't even know who you really are anymore. And all of a sudden, a gap forms between who you really are and the mask that you're wearing. And we do things all the time that actually widens this gap. It's what I call the flyby question. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's done the flyby question. Maybe you did the flyby questions just 30 minutes ago. The flyby question is this. You see that person walking towards you, you're walking towards them. As you get just a couple feet, there's this right distance. You know the distance, the right distance, and you look at that person and you go, how are you doing? And as you're saying, how are you doing? In just rhythm, they say, good, how are you doing? By that point, you're already past them. You know what I mean? I mean, your life could be crumbling, and we're just conditioned to say, God, how about you? Your marriage could just be in shambles, and you're like, God, how about you? You could have just got one of the most intense medical phone calls ever, and you're like, hey, awesome, and you just keep going. See, we've built into our rhythm of life the flyby, how are you doing? And it just widens the gap. You see, we're called to live differently. If you've made Jesus a subject of your life, I mean, I'm going to specifically just focus on you. If Jesus is a subject, this is for you. If you're checking out things, you're not sure about Jesus, I think there's some great principles here, but if you made Jesus a subject of your life, I'm just saying, when that decision was made, you're called to live differently. See, I think for pastors, this whole idea of who you really are, your personality and your persona is pretty intense. Because here's what I get. I mean, I got to live out what I talk about. And you want me to live out what I talk about. Right? There's this pressure for me to wear a mask. Like everything I talk about, I have perfected. And even to some degree with you, you're really okay with thinking that I have it all figured out. But for me, and this is for me, I'm not speaking for every pastor, every priest, every rabbi, everywhere. I'm just for me, for Chris Trethewey. My pursuit isn't because I'm a pastor. My pursuit to live differently is because Jesus is the subject of my life. Not because of my position, not because of what I do on the weekend. I'm just telling you, my pursuit to live differently is because when Jesus became the subject of my life, I want to live differently. I want to live in reflection of Jesus. That's my pursuit. And I try very intentionally to be as transparent, as authentic as I can be when I share. So a few moments ago, when I put the word accept up on the screen, and I gave this list of exceptions. You know, except for height, I wish I was taller. Except for my metabolism, I wish, like I had a different metabolism. All of those excepts were mine, personally mine. Even the smile one. Here's the thing, and this is just, I'm just telling you, you're gonna laugh, some of you might think it's absurd, all of you might think it's absurd, but it's me. I don't know how to smile. Seriously. And there's two issues attached to that one statement. One is this. When I smile, and if you've ever seen a picture of me smiling, and from this point on, whenever you see a picture of me smiling, I promise you, I'm only thinking of one thing in that moment. One thing. You know what I'm thinking? I don't know where I should put my tongue. I'm serious. When I smile with my mouth open, I'm just not sure where my tongue is supposed to go. So if I close my mouth, now I'm like, I'm not sure where, like, I don't know what to do with it. So I'm smiling, and I'm like, my tongue is lost. Like, what do I do with it? I know some of you want to help me out with it. It doesn't matter what you have to say. I'm just telling you, it doesn't matter. You can give me all the tongue coaching possible, and I'm not sure if I should say that, by the way. That statement out of context is tricky, right? But here's my second issue with my smile. My second issue, my dad had one of those smiles that just lit up a room. He did. My dad, when he was alive, he had that smile. When my dad would walk into a room, his smile was so contagious. I mean, everyone, even the people that never thought that their mouth could go from a frown and go up, like those people, like they actually discovered how to smile. My dad, when he walked in a room, his smile would just change the fabric of the space. My dad, in his last week of life, when he couldn't even lift his head off the couch or lift his head off the bed. I'm just telling you, when people came in to say their last goodbyes, which is always a weird, awkward experience, you know what my dad would do? That smile. I just don't have that smile. And so what I try to do, I try to be as authentic and transparent as I can. Now, there's some things I just will never share on stage because you just don't want me to. Because part of living differently is this. God designed us to know and to be known. When God designed, created your kidneys, your inmost being, who you are, He hardwired you to know people and to be known, to live in relationship together. I mean, it's just who we are. And that's why relationships are the most foundational component of all of our lives. It's why the quality of our life is intrinsically tied to the quality of our relationships, because God designed us that way. And we're designed to know people, really know them, and for them to know us. And in the New Testament is that part of the Bible where it tells the story of Jesus and Jesus's launch of the strategy for the rest of time. The church, and the purpose of the church is to point people back to Jesus, to tell people who Jesus is. And then in the New Testament, there's this one Greek word. It's usually translated into two English words, or two English words is one another. But the Greek word is all alone. And that Greek word literally means mutually or reciprocally. In 59 different verses, these one another verses, it tells us how we are to live different, how we are to know and to be known. And here's the thing. It will be so easy as we look at a couple of these one another verses. It'll be so easy for you to say, yeah, I'll do that when that person does it. But here's the thing. When Jesus is the subject of your life, you follow Jesus' example. And Jesus, well, how he treated people had nothing to do with how people treated him. And how Jesus extended forgiveness to people had nothing to do whether or not they extended forgiveness to him. And how Jesus loved people had nothing to do with how other people loved him. You see, what we have to realize in every one of our relationships, we are the common denominator. And you and me, we have a decision to make. Are we going to live differently? So James, the brother of Jesus, he wrote these words. He said, therefore confess your sins to each other, same or to one another. It's that same Greek word, all alone. So right now we're going to take 5 minutes, and here's what I want you to do across all of our locations, even those of you online. I just want you to turn to a person next to you, and I want you to share with them your deepest, darkest secret. Go. Some of you are sitting here for the very first time or online for the first time, you're like, oh, this just got weird. Right? Doesn't that feel completely weird? Right? Because it is weird. You see, when James wrote these words, it wasn't about a church service on a weekend where you're sitting in rows. When he wrote these words, right, he said reciprocally, mutually. Like this line in rows in a church service feels so awkward and weird. But this line, when you're sitting around a group of people where your commitment is to know and to be known, when you commit to, I'm going to share transparently, I'm going to share authentically, because the result of this is life-changing. And not only are we called to share authentically with each other, James says, and pray for each other. Pray for each other. Prayer is kind of like the question, how are you doing today? If you've been around church world, if you've been a Christian for some time, you know this. It's so easy, just like, how are you doing? Good. How are you doing? Good. And you pass each other by. It's so easy to say to the person, oh, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. How many times do you actually pray for the person that you say you're praying for? And one of the things that I really try hard, disciplined on, two things in the rhythm of my life. When someone comes up and asks me, hey, will you pray for me? You know what I do right in that moment? I pray for them. Last weekend at our Du Bois Hill campus, I'm out in the lobby. I mean, kids and people and laughter and high fives. I mean, it's chaos everywhere. And this person walked up and like, hey, will you pray for me? I'm like, right here, right in the lobby. The second thing I do, consistently, not perfectly, consistently. I use this to-do app. It's called Trello. But anyway, it's where I put all my projects, all my action lists, everything. Well, I have a Trello board just to pray for people. And I just populate that every time. When someone says, will you pray? Yep. And I will tell them, so you know I'm not texting someone, I'm writing down your prayer request. So that throughout the week, I'm praying for people. Really praying. Not the drive-by, pray for you. Not really. And when you share authentically, and when you pray for each other in this commitment to be known and to know, guess what? You will be healed. That's when you invite people in to the darkest parts of your life. All of those exceptions. You say, I'm going to show you some of my exceptions. Who do you have in your life where it's mutual, where it's reciprocal? Right? Because the prayer of a righteous person walking with God, a person that is making Jesus the subject of their life, not a perfect person, but someone who's committed to live differently, is powerful and effective. The author of Hebrews writes these words, and let us consider, that has everything to do with sitting down, carving out time, giving a lot of intentionality. This is not a passing by thought. Let us consider how we may spur, and that word spur is almost always used in a negative connotation. Like, that idea is to irritate someone, to stir up anger. But the author here actually positions this word spur in a positive light, to spur one another towards these two actions, love and good deeds. That's why we talk so much here at Tri-County about loving first. We're just going to be a church that loves first. I'm just telling you, when someone hurts you, love first. When someone breaks trust with you, love first. When someone betrays you, love first. When someone doesn't meet you where you think they should meet you relationally, love first. When someone lets you down, love first. You see, that's the pursuit. In all things, we are to love first. It's easy to say, hear me. But I tell you, when it's your pursuit in every relationship, to love first, no matter what that person does, just to love first. And every time you think, but I can't, it's too difficult, remember, loving first created the motion for Jesus to crawl onto a cross for you. So let us consider, let us be intentional. Let us sit down and really think about how we can spur, irritate, create some tension on how to love and good deeds, how to serve each other. The author goes on and says, not giving up meeting together, some in the habit of doing. That's why carving out 65 minutes on a weekend is so healthy, to come together, to worship together. It's why being part of a life group is so critical. We're all busy. But we make a priority for the things that are important. And being together is important. And then the author writes, but encouraging one another. We have what we call the leadership accelerator. There are 4 actions that we just call upon all of our leaders who serve across all of our locations. And that last action is encourage. And we have a simple statement that gets attached to the word encourage. It's to speak life and stand beside. So let me ask you a question. This last week, just look at this last week. Interacting with people, and you name the relationship. But this last week, did you spend more time speaking life into people or complaining about people? This last week, did you spend more time encouraging someone or tearing someone apart? In this last week, did you spend more time coming beside someone or pointing out why that person or those people are wrong? When you think about this last week, what have you done to speak life and stand beside compared to how much time you've leveraged to tear down and push away? Just maybe, if you actually sat there and thought about it, the vast percentage of your words were not to speak life, and the vast majority of your actions was not to stand beside. And that's an elephant in the room. And then Paul, writing to the church in Rome, said, live in harmony with one another. There's nothing more beautiful when people are singing in harmony together. And if you've ever been around a moment where people weren't singing in harmony, not so beautiful. Paul's like, hey, there's something about when you commit, when you make a commitment to be in harmony with one another. That's why encouraging one another is so important. That's why speaking life and standing beside is so important. It's why loving first is so important. It's why serving other people is that's living differently. He goes, do not be proud, but be willing to be associated with people of low position. He was talking about people who had a different kind of social economic stance in them, and you can apply this to any other person that doesn't fit the mold that you think people should fit. Do not be conceited. He goes on and he says, do not repay anyone evil for evil. And we don't like this. Because when someone gossips about you, what do you want to do and what do you usually do? Gossip about them. And when someone breaks your trust, guess what you do? You make sure they know that they broke your trust, and you're going to hold that over their head. And when someone betrays you, what do you want to do to them? You want to get back at them. And when someone stabs you in the back, want to do to them? You want to stab them in the back. And what happens to the quality of your relationships? See, Jesus has called you to live differently. You. Do not repay evil for evil, but be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And this, we could spend so much time just on that one statement because that's so difficult. But Paul's like, hey, it's about living in harmony with everyone. And then writes, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace. This last week, this last 7 days, did you spend more time creating peace in every one of your relationships, or did you spend more time creating chaos? What is it? You see, God made you, God made me awesomely wonderful. And when we start to put into our bag all the exceptions, and we take that bag and we put it on the shelf, We become imaginary. So my encouragement for you is this, is to change this one word. It might feel like such a slight change, but it's such a powerful change. Instead of writing accept, writing despite. Because that enables all of us in the right circle of people to know and to be known. When we're like, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, despite, I got some issues and I'm going to talk about these issues. I'm not going to make my own bag of exceptions and put them on the shelf and just deal with them later. I'm just going to call them out because all of us have I'm awesomely wonderful, and all of us have our list of despite these things, but God, you still made me awesomely wonderful, and I'm going to commit to living differently. And when we are in relationships where we are known and where we get to know people, we take our mask. We put it away. We put it away. One action for you this week. Like I mentioned a few moments ago, there's 59 one another verses in the New Testament. And if you go to tcconline.info, our discussion guide, we do these every week, and we have life groups doing these consistently. We have individuals doing these. I always challenge people to grab a group of people. It's just a tool and resource for you, but we put all 59 of those one another verses in there. Take one another. Maybe it's one that you heard in our time together. Take one and say, God, this week, I'm going to commit to living this out. God, this week, I'm just going to encourage people. Every time I'm about to say something negative, every time I'm ready to say something that tears people down, I'm just going to encourage people. This week, God, every turn, I'm going to encourage and commit to 1 week to living differently. We focus on you, your personality, and your persona. And next week, we're going to look at this third part. And I'm just telling you, this third part, well, this third one has impacted 1 and 2 significantly. That's where we'll pick up next week. You were designed. Hold on to this. You were designed, every one of you, to be known and to know. You were designed to be in relationship. And I get that you have hurt that is screaming at you to not be known ever again. And every time that voice screams at you, here's what I want you to hold on to. Jesus had people who betrayed him. Jesus had people who stabbed him in the back. Jesus had people who broke trust with him. Jesus had people who said, I love you. I will never. And they did. Jesus had people who looked him in the eyes and still walked the other way. And the Son of God chose to come down to this earth to be a person and experienced everything relationally that you and I have ever experienced. And you know what he said? Live differently. Love first.